rectangular wooden stockade was begun in 1734, completed in 1736, and garrisoned at the interim thereafter by French troops in 1760. It was rebuilt in 1764 after the defeat of the French in the French and Indian War. Its garrison was withdrawn 2 years later, and the people of Kaskaskia destroyed the fort to prevent the English from occupying it. For several years during the period of disorder which followed the American Revolution, John Dodge, a notorious adventurer, occupied Fort Kaskaskia and made it headquarters for the tyrannical and illegal rule which he maintained over this region. With Dodge's expulsion and the establishment of stable government in 1790, Fort Kaskaskia was abandoned forever, and this was erected by the state of Illinois in 1935. Okay. The French Fort. The first half of the 18th century was a period of virtually constant warfare between France and Great Britain. In 1759, fear of an attack by the British or by British-controlled Indians caused the town people of French Kaskaskia to request that a fort be built for their protection. Fort Kaskaskia was built in late 1734 or early 1935, but was never completed. When the British arrived in 1765, they found the unfinished fort in ruins, having never been occupied. The inhabitants of Kaskaskia removed most of the salvageable building material for their own use. Then the interim fort. The British never occupied Fort Kaskaskia, choosing instead to take over the Jesuit compound in the town of Kaskaskia, which they renamed Fort Gage. It was this fort which George Roger Clark captured on July 4, 1778. Throughout the American Revolution, the remains of Fort Kaskaskia were ignored. In the early 1780s, an American adventurer, John Dodge, moved into what was left of Fort Kaskaskia, rebuilding it and installing his private army. Dodge ruled Kaskaskia in a tyrannical fashion until 1790, forcing the frightened town people to give him money, goods, and service. Finally, in March of 1790, Arthur St. Clair, governor of the newly organized Northwestern Territory, arrived with a detachment of the United States Army. In 1881, the Mississippi River cut through the narrow peninsula of land on which the town of Kaskaskia was located, flowing into the channels of the Kaskaskia River. The town, which had been the capital of Illinois from 1818 to 1820, was now destroyed. Over the next few years, the river eroded the very land on which the town stood. Kaskaskia's 3 cemeteries were about to be washed away, causing concern over the sacred remains of Illinois' pioneer settlers. In 1891, legislation was drafted to move the cemeteries to higher ground across the river. A 6-acre burial plot was laid off, and almost 4,000 boxes, some containing whole families, were transferred to a new resting remains. Nearly half of the new graves were unknown, as records were missing. The new location was called the Garrison Hill Cemetery, in reference to the nearby Fort Kaskaskia. A 26 granite shaft was erected as a memorial to Illinois' pioneer. The cemetery was dedicated on July 4, 1893, and became the first state historic site. A listing of those known to be buried in the Garrison Hill Cemetery is available in the site office. And it gravestone of Mary L. Nash, died April 1824, age 21. Next to her is Elizabeth Humboldt, consort of Lewis, born in January, and the death you're unable to see. September 11th, 1878, died July 19th, 1879. And further down this hill, this is the air in memory of, and I will go down. I don't think there's any reason. Okay, this is the family plot of the numbers from 1820 to 1903. These little markers have nothing on them. This type of cross must be a marker of a grave site. There's no names on it. This is another Anna Morrison. He was born in 1843 and died in 1875.
The motors you hear in the background, one of them is a plane going overhead. The other is a tug going down the river, which is directly ahead of us. If you look out through the trees, you can see the river. And there's a bend in the river right here, which was shown earlier.
This is the Barkers, Anna and Thad, 1855 to 1934, and Thad was from 1855 to 1923. Apparently those two crosses are part of the family because there are newer stones in this cemetery.
Josephina.
Here, apparently this is all together. And this one was 20, Josephine was 26 years. Jose was 1 year. And that other one was 11 years, 4 months. So all these have the ages on them. The oldest one so far is 43. They're all 1 year to... This one was 27. 10 years. 13. They didn't live very long.
Oh,
Get over how erratic they're buried.
this is looking up the hill from the river. Don't you imagine those are family cemetery plots and they just weren't used up or weren't taken care of? I can see the faces on them, of them.
Captain Jacob Zinman, born December 1st, 1791, died August 27th, 1860. He was a member of the Masons. And this is his wife, Sarah, and she died in 1852 at the age of 61.
I'll just pan the area a little bit here from top of the hill. Every once in a while you'll see a stone. Must be family plots.
Yeah, this was a reverend. In memory of Reverend Nicholas Perrin, born at Val, France, September 13, 1799. Died October 5th, 1859, having been pastor of this parish for 20 years.
And the stone was broken off and laying on the ground. This is the Kaskaskia River, the one that moved. We'll get the information in a minute. This is the overlook. I'll go over there by Mary. She'll read that.
When the town of Kaskaskia was founded in 1703, the location chosen was the narrow peninsula between the Kaskaskia and Mississippi River. Although flood-prone, the site controlled trade and travel on both important waterways. In 1881, the Mississippi cut through the neck of the land north of the town and occupied the channel of the Kaskaskia River. The town was doomed. In the following years, the Mississippi eroded the land and destroyed the town of Kaskaskia. By 1915, the town site had disappeared and only a small island remained. The village was formed in 1703 by Kaskaskia Indians, attended by a French priest and fur traders. It grew to be the center of French life in the Illinois country, occupied by the British in 1765, captured for Virginia by George Roger Clark, 1778, gateway to the Northwest capital of Illinois Territory, 1809 to 1818, the first capital state of Illinois, 1818 to 1819. The sunken city of Kaskaskia. Father of waters, maid of God, forget the yesterday of ages you were free, nor count tomorrow's aeons you will yet remain until untrampled in the majesty. When bold invaders came with boastful fame to make you slave, you bore them languishly till, with unwanted fear for your domain, a city here you grappled to your breast, plunging your towers in your torrent lanes. You still they lie, man's weakness to attest. Spare their brave, whose chosen ghost or stalks the tide, bewildered who their streets should thus molest. In vain they seek the city where they died, their glory vanished and their rest denied. Oh, and here's another one to a sunken city. O Mississippi, monarch of the plains, despoiler old, we mourn your victims slow, now stay the mighty minions of your train, that this poor vale may no more havoc know. Did not far mountains burst torrential spleens, nor tempests wreck their lightning souls in woe. And here beneath your front, the trembling sheen, the city lights her walls and spirals down hurled. No stone is left whereon some chisel king may tell her ravaged fame unto the world. And though your rootless fury her defiles, now over her merry tone your waves have herald, with sunbeams all too fair to be resolved in dance ironic over her ruined halls. To a sunken city, God temples floor these level waters pave, and by these hills his altars are defamed. The azure ceilings heavens dome the nave, while far below to watery clefts assigned, the mother of 1,000 cities lies, in nature vast, cathedral deep and shine, but never on that barren floor our eyes may find inscriptions over her sodden cell. How she arose a star in western skies, how on her hopes there broke a dreadful kneel, aghast with fear from doom she could not stir, she paled her glory clutching, as she felt this spoil forever, yet the soul of her went not into the sunken scepter. That's all three of the poems.
Okay, I'm going to get this
Yes, that's the playground.
No.
Of April 1881, the Mississippi divided its channel and broke into the lower Kaskaskia River below this bluff, forming Kaskaskia Island. The historic town of Kaskaskia lay directly in its path and was eventually destroyed. Thus the role played by the Kaskaskia in the great drama of the history closed in tragedy. Okay. Standing on the area was the original Fort Kaskaskia was built overlooking the river, and it just goes straight down from here. The original fort was burnt after it was no longer being used, and these mounds is what the man said was the remainder of the fort. And of course there's a playground down there on further down looking into the sun, and all kinds of picnic tables.